spend it day one. I mean, it's gonna sit there and it's gonna earn a little interest. That's what construction fund earnings are, little interest earnings on the money. So, lengthy discussion, just to provide you my second recommendation, which is size, and it's 1.35 million. That's the second recommendation in terms of size. Okay, so we've got authority, we've got size. Let's talk about term. You'll see we've got a 20-year, basically a 20-year term. That is consistent with all the capital financial plan we've been doing for, at least over 2, 3, 4 years. We've been talking about this project and planning for it. And the reason for the long term, because if this was a smaller road project, I'd probably be talking about a 10-year deal, but since we're talking about a state highway, it probably won't be touched again for 50 years. I felt the 20-year term was fine, but for affordability. The city has existing debt that you're making payments on, and some of that debt's going offline. Specifically, your 2004 refunding bonds that originally were issued in '96, which were some tax increment bonds down for the downtown. Those go offline. This year is your last year that you levied for those bonds, meaning the levy for that bond is now available for next year's budget, which would be the first levy for this bond. And that amount was just over $70,000. Okay? So based on my projected term and interest rates here, if you look over to the right, you'll see the special assessment revenues and then the tax levies. Note that those tax levies are right around that $70,000 figure. So I make the statement in the letter, if you read it later, that says this bond issue should have little or no impact on your budget because it's a $70,000 levy you already have. It's just being used now for this new deal. If that makes any sense. As far as these interest rates, you'll see that they go from small to large. This is not a variable rate. It is we would have fixed rates. When this deal is done, and if you approve any proposal, your payments will be known and fixed. They will not change unless you choose to prepay or refinance or something like that. The reason those rates change over time is because this investor who chops up your bond and sells pieces to different folks, some folks are going to buy the early stuff, some folks are going to buy the later stuff. Folks that buy the early stuff get a smaller interest rate. Folks that buy the later stuff get a higher interest rate. Okay? So what does all that mean? Well, the underwriter's discount that I mentioned at the top in the beginning, plus all the interest that's assigned there, that's all considered an interest expense. If you take your eyes to the right, you'll see a bold number there of just under 3.8% net effective rate. One way to look at this is you're borrowing money at 3.8%. Okay, we should come up with the same kind of payments if I was to just kind of take out all this stuff and just plug in 3.8. Should work out. Okay, so that's what that calculation is over on the right. All right, what other features in terms of recommendations? Well, underneath that bold net effective rate, you'll see something called call option, called February 1st, 2022. Whenever a city issues debt, especially when it's of any size and it's open market, the investors involved do not want you to pay them off next Tuesday. They want to make this investment. They've got their own plans and strategies. They want to make sure they're protected for a period of time. So in order to entice potential buyers and to make them interested in the deal, we have to make a promise as a city not to prepay for a period of time. When I first started in this industry, late 90s, 10 years was the typical call option to not prepay. We've shortened that up to 7 or 8 years. And we can, if you disagree with me, we can put any time you like. The danger is the shorter you make that call feature, the more likely you'll be penalized on interest rate. So investors might say, yeah, well, okay, you can have a 3-year call, but then I want another quarter point. All right. So that's the balancing act that I'm trying to play with you.
What if we went 10 years? What do you think it would do?
I don't think you'd benefit from it.
Not much.
And that's why 7 to 8 years is plenty, you know. So, we're balancing our interests. I'm including me with you, your interests with the interests of the investor. You want short, flexible call provision. They want long, difficult call provision. So what's the balance? But I will note, after that date, you can prepay at any time, in whole or in part. No penalties. Complete flexibility after that date. Okay, now you'll, so that's most of the easy stuff. I'm gonna stop there before I get into the hard stuff, so, any questions so far?
If we decided to call bonds, say in 2023,
Yes.
what we would pay off, we would just pay off the principal and on any of the bonds that we wanted to call.
Right, so you have multiple borrowings outstanding. We're
Okay.
gonna talk about those in a minute. And come that date, if you have some money that you wanna buy down the debt of the city, it may or may not be this issue. I would be looking at first of all, what debt's callable and what debt carries the highest interest rate. And that's the one you wanna pay down. So if you had an extra 50,000 you wanted to pay off, you could do it. Or if you had an extra 100,000 or $1 million, you could do it. Okay? You could pick any level thereof. So for instance, one of the things that I do is I look at your debt and I see if there's any refunding opportunities. You know, should we refinance and save some money on lower interest rates? And sometimes what I find is, yeah, you can save money refinancing, or, you know what, you can just throw $50,000 cash at it and save just as much money. So why go refinancing? Just like you might do your mortgage at home. Throw an extra $100 a month into the payment to try and shorten the term.
Okay.
All right. Difficult stuff. Let's talk about that. You'll see under the purchaser, I've got proposed for negotiation. I can tell you right now that typically when I've got a deal of this size, that's basically straightforward. General obligation improvement bond, one of the easiest type of bonds for investors to understand, because they happen so often. You'll see that I'm not proposing a competitive sale, which would normally be my automatic reaction, competitive sale. Just like they did that road project, we bid this bond issue. We would bid out on that discount, we bid out on these coupon rates, and we take the best deal. Okay? As you know, your city has faced so many challenges over the past 5 to 10 years. And some of these challenges, I think, we're going to do better by selecting an investor and negotiating, because we're gonna be able to explain these challenges in a more sit-down fashion, as opposed to a competitive sale. You know, an official statement is prepared, it's kind of put out there, there's no interaction with the bidders, they just bid on it, okay? They make their own prejudiced view of Rushford, they don't get to have any interaction, they don't have a sense. Whereas in a negotiation, because of your challenges, which I'll kind of lay out for you, I think we can explain it. And I think we got a good story to tell. But we have to tell that story, we have to be able to tell it in order to get that best deal that we can. What are some of the challenges? Well, the city, as you know, carries a high level of debt. That's been a product mostly of flooding and whatnot else. I'll talk about debt levels in a minute, but really of all your challenges, that's the one that's least concerning to me. Another concern, which has been a concern since we last did a deal, I think in 2012, was your cash reserves. If you look at your overall cash in the city, it doesn't look too bad. But when you open up the books and you kind of see which funds that cash is in, is it spoken for, is it assigned, your cash reserves become a point of concern. Why? Well, a lot of stuff outside of your control. FEMA has been very, very slow to reimburse you for expenditures you made as a result of the floods. In fact, Mr. Sarby tells me that it could be as much as $800,000, hopefully, that we expect to collect this year. All right. I mentioned earlier that we have some engineering funds in here that would reimburse funds spent to date. I don't know what's been, do you recall what was spent to date so far?
I don't.
A ballpark
something.
figure. What?
3 something.
300 some
something,
thousand.
yeah.
So we're talking that by the end of this year, we could have an additional 1 something million than we do now. That's a good story to tell, but I gotta be able to sit down and explain it, right? To the people